Hi, Nina.
Hello, it's so nice to see you.
So nice to talk to you and to see you. So I'm going to give an introduction.
Okay.
Nina Kavin, she's a writer and a very dedicated community activist. She co-founded Dear Evanston, which has been which is a social media platform, an action-oriented entity that seeks to engage Evanstonians in constructive dialogue and action around issues of racial equity and to lift up the stories of Evanstonians, whose voices are often less heard. So Nina and her family have lived in Evanston for 22 years. She's been involved in the Jewish community. She holds a BA in English from the University of Chicago. Anyway, I love your quote. Leonard Cohen's anthem, there is a crack in everything and that's how the light gets in.
Yes.
Just amazing, amazing quote. Nina, tell me a story.
Yeah, so we came to the States when I was 15, and I, growing up in South Africa as a kid, I knew that we were living under apartheid, and when I think back on it, I had a lot of guilt and a lot of powerlessness. So I knew that things were really bad and wrong. And I lived with parents who thought things were bad and wrong. But they were sort of, my dad was a doctor, my mom was a housewife, and we were good people, but we were not, my family was not in any way an activist family. We, we had a maid, we had gardeners, we did all the things that most South Africans did. And my family, my parents treated them very, very well, but really didn't do anything more. And so as a child, I remember, things like walking up the street to go to the shops and saying hello to every Black person who walked by, because you wanted to show them you were good, you were nice. And
it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault.
And I remember it being like stressful or sad or, frustrating. And so then we came to the States when I was 15. And again, I was not really an involved person. Went to college. I lived in Hyde Park, went to the University of Chicago. And then I came up here with my husband when I was pregnant with my first child, because he had gone to Northwestern, and because, like almost all white Evanstonians I know, you move to Evanston because it's diverse and because it's a city and it's close to Chicago, because you don't want to make that break and become a suburbanite,
Right.
And so for a lot of years while my kids were growing up, I lived in this diverse community. My kids they first went to Jewish day school, and then they went to Evanston public schools. And you just kind of feel like you're living in this great liberal diverse city. And then I started serving on the board of a cafe called Kurt's Cafe, which works with young men and women who have been in trouble with the law. And most of them are African American. And that was sort of how I came out of, I had worked as in PR, and I'd worked at the Anti-Defamation League as the associate director there. And then I just like hibernated. My husband was traveling a lot, and I went, Kurt's Cafe was sort of like me coming back to myself. And from Kurt's Cafe, I went to a program called Leadership Evanston. And there, it's, to learn about Evanston, to get more involved in Evanston and make connections and learn how to be a leader. And I wasn't really thinking about being a leader at all. But I learned a ton. And one of the main things at Leadership Evanston was we read the book by Bryan Stevenson called Just Mercy. And Bryan Stevenson basically, between Bryan Stevenson and reading his book and taking a bus tour of Evanston, particularly the 5th Ward of Evanston, which is the historical Black ward of Evanston, my eyes and my mind and my heart blew up. And I remembered when we were on that bus, the bus ride around the 5th Ward, it reminded me of a time when I was in standard 5, 7th grade, so I was 12, where we had a trip to Soweto. And we went to Soweto, and I couldn't believe how quickly it took us to get from Johannesburg to Soweto, because in my mind, it was like a million miles away. It was like a separate world entirely. And I remember looking out of that window and then, going and visiting schools and doing all these things, and then going back to King David, to my school, to my neighborhood, and looking out of the window, driving around the 5th Ward. I said to myself, I'm never going back there. Like, I'm never going to just stay on the bus again. I've been living with my eyes closed, with my heart, even though I've always thought of myself as a good person, a kind person, a liberal person. I was not open. I wasn't making connections across race or economics. I lived in a white part of Evanston. My friends were all white, mostly Jewish. And so it was a huge eye-opener for me. And Brian Stevenson has 4, I don't know what you'd call them, tenets or steps towards racial justice. And they are getting proximate, getting uncomfortable, changing the narrative, and maintaining hope. And those 4 things just spoke to me. And I was like, and it was time for me to get proximate. And so in Leadership Evanston, we were assigned this group project, and we were given a topic. And my group's topic was safety and violence in Evanston, something like that. And we decided to do a social media project and ask people about their experience with violence in Evanston. And no one was really coming to us with their stories. So we started going out to the community, and I started going and meeting all these people in the Black community who have lived here for 3, 4, 5 generations, people who have been here much, much longer than most white people have been in Evanston. And yet most white Evanstonians know nothing about them or their history at all. And so that started my journey. I mean, really, it brought me full circle back to, the bus ride in Soweto and my life feeling very powerless as a kid. And so I started interviewing people ostensibly about violence in Evanston, but very soon it just became about their lives. And the more I talked to them, the more I learned about Evanston's past and redlining and racism in Evanston and, landmarks in Evanston that were really meaningful to the Black community, but that no one knows about. And so I started telling those stories because I believe that a lot of white people will listen to other white people who they like or who they're friends with or who they admire much more than they'll listen to a Black person who they don't know at all. And that's an unfortunate thing, but I think it's true. It may be getting a little bit less true now, I have to say, and which is fantastic. But so I started doing that, and I had racial justice book groups every other month. And I actually last year took 2 buses of people from Evanston ages 8 to 80, or like 60% Black, 40% white, and everything in between, to Alabama, to Montgomery, Alabama. And it was an incredibly, incredibly powerful experience. And we did, and I worked with other people. I worked with 2 friends of mine and 3 friends of mine. And we had we found a travel agent who lives in Alabama, but who used to live in Evanston, who is an African-American woman. We did it incredibly thoughtfully, and we had a lot of preparation beforehand. We required everybody going on the buses to read Brian Stevenson's book and to read White Fragility. And we had 2 introductory sessions where we set expectations, and we talked to the white people about the fact, and white and Jewish people, about, even though we may feel going to this museum that was going to talk about, enslavement, from enslavement to mass incarceration, that we would it would resonate with our story, our Holocaust story, that we needed to make sure that that was a story we told ourselves and commented on within and among ourselves, and not to our Black friends who we were with, because this was their history and their journey, and that we really were there as witnesses and not to center it all around our experiences. And a lot of people, especially white people, I think learned a lot about what it means to be white and witness Black history and learn about the trauma of Black history. And a lot of the folks who came on the trip, we made it free for people who couldn't otherwise go. And so we had like a lot of seniors, and I think they were incredibly grateful, and it was unbelievably powerful and painful for them. And I feel like all those kinds of things, everything that I've done in the past 5 years really was informed by my childhood. And I guess why I've been so passionately working at it for 5 years is it's sort of my personal effort at reparations,
Yes.
at
Yes.
trying to repair harm I had done or my family had done,
Yes.
and the powerlessness that I felt as a kid, and that
Yes.
I'm not powerless anymore.
Yes.
And so, I do think that I've learned a lot, and I've also learned that there's a big question about where white people fit in to the American race story, and just how much work we can do or we should do. And especially in this past year, that's become a really important question to ask. And it's one that I'm really grappling with. But I think, that's sort of my South African story. I think back also, I talked about Soweto, and that was a very impactful thing. And I also remember once when I was a little girl, I think I was 12. I really think it was honestly around the same time as the Soweto trip. I can't tell you a year before that year, but it was around me being 11, 12-ish. And in the middle of the night, there was an accident. We lived on a corner that across the road from us was a field, a big field. And there was an accident, and 2 cars crashed into each other and turned over into the veld. And it was late at night. I was sleeping. I think it might have been my birthday. And I think it was my 12th birthday. And I woke up, and my dad's a doctor, and everyone woke up, and my dad went running across the road to the veld. And one of the cars had Black men in it, and one of the cars had white people in it.
Oh my God, what a drama.
And I remember my dad coming back and calling the ambulance. And I remember sitting and waiting, and the white ambulance came first, and then the Black ambulance came. And I remember then, I don't remember ever talking about it or having my family talk about it, but I remember realizing how weird it was that there were 2 ambulances because it was different for the different races, and that the white one came first. And so I feel like, that in a little kind of a nutshell is sort of how I would wrap my story up in a bow of, the powerlessness and the guilt, and then coming here and being blind for a very long time and feeling powerless for a long time. And
being witness now and doing what
witness.
you can, doing what you can, and the effort that you've made in these past 5 years to educate yourself and others.
Yeah, it's been I have never met more amazing people with stories and experiences so different to mine, who so many people don't know, and the riches that they gave me. I feel like I got so much more from learning from them than I could ever give back. I hope I have given back. I do believe I have given back, and I believe I have made change to an extent in Evanston, but not nearly as much as needs to happen or that I could ever make happen. It's frustrating, but I am proud of what I've done and frustrated with what I've done as well. That's my story.
That's your story, which is to be expected because we can do so much, and you know, and we can try.
Yeah.
And you did, and you gave it your all. Thank you for your story, Nina.
Thank you for asking me for my story.
It's lovely to talk to you.